All right. So today I want to welcome Cass Morrow. Cass, this is what he says about himself. He is a managing, self-aware, severe narcissist who only knew 7-day anger binges and how to emotionally abuse, physically, and sexually assault his wife. Welcome, Cass. That's kind of a harsh introduction, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I was a very, very bad man, and there's a lot stronger words we can use.
Well, that's the thing is that everybody has troubles in their marriage, but most of the time people don't want to admit that they have any kind of problem at all. And what I find often is they don't admit it or try to get any help sometimes until it's too late. So I want you to start off today. Just tell us a little bit about your marriage, how long you've been married, and kind of a little bit about y'all's families.
Yeah, you bet. So Catherine and I have been married just coming on 9 years now. We married in 30 days. We flirted for a little while, finally got into it, got married, and it was within another 30 days that we were in big trouble. And I know a lot of people think, well, that's because you married so fast. No, it's not. It's because of the upbringing I had, her inability to understand what was going on, but mostly my inability to understand what relationship even was. And we had the next 4 years of as toxic as you can imagine, which is why we feel so strongly about why people should not be quitting on their marriage, because we've overcome it all. We're now inspiring couples all around the world. We've got a beautiful family. If you're watching, you can see my pictures are behind me, but it's just our children have never seen. I call everything violence, but they've never seen, the real big fights. They've never seen them. Sure, we disagree, but we call it hard conversations. We get through, we flip it. I turn it to fun. Everything's exciting, and our life is on fire. From just connection and praise and gratitude to full on intimacy. And we don't even look back at the past unless we're laughing about Ryan, the old guy, you know?
Or you're talking on a podcast.
Well, yeah,
Right?
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so what I want you to give us today, because there's so many people out there that have, a lot of challenges in marriage. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of conflict. And to me, I always say, if you don't like your spouse, then, you're not going to connect with your spouse. And it's important to like your spouse, to do nice things for each other. But sometimes people have so many problems from maybe childhood, maybe young adulthood, and we carry all that baggage into our marriages. And when we're dating, it's all fun and adventure, right? But
Mhm.
then eventually, you start getting on each other's nerves. You're living together, you're rubbing each other wrong. And so sometimes it's both people. And sometimes, one person's carrying a chip on their shoulder. And since it says that you were a narcissist, I'm kind of thinking maybe you had a chip on your shoulder. You want to tell us a
Oh,
little bit about that?
absolutely. The first thing I'd like to touch on with that is you're right. We all have baggage, and we're all told to, clean up your baggage before you get into the relationship. It's your responsibility. But listen, I'm going to challenge every one of your listeners today. You fell in love with that person with the baggage. You probably helped them raise what you call red flags now. And if you're talking about the extreme stuff, which, I mean, let's be honest, most people have narcissistic traits, but not everybody's a narcissist. It's being really thrown around. And it is this chip on the shoulder. It is this woe is me. I'm ready to love. That's the love bomb. But this, I want so much more and I don't know how, so I'm going to sabotage everything. But, even if we don't go to the extreme cases, I know you love communication. Let's just talk about that for a second. We're
Mhm.
not taught to feel properly as children. Don't cry. Go to your room if you're going to be loud. So you're not taught to express feeling. This is all what we say is communication is key. And so we all kind of have a chip on our shoulder. That love and validation we start with in the relationship is slowly replaced with blame and trying to fix your partner. So I would challenge everybody thinking about narcissism or codependency, attachment disorder. Look, honestly, just start with the basics. Lose the chip, learn to love, because if you want more in your marriage, show gratitude. You wouldn't even
Mhm.
be thinking about listening to a podcast like this if you didn't want more. And if you didn't want more with your partner, it doesn't really matter what your chip is. Lose it, because it's because of them you're trying to do something different, learn more right now to have something more,
Well,
you know?
really, what I hear from you is first, we have to be aware that we have a problem. And when people just won't admit it. And they say, I don't have, we don't have any problems. It's, we just aren't getting along here and there. But awareness and Cass, whenever you talk about anger, I happen to know in the communication styles that anger is a top emotion. And that whenever people have anger as their top emotion, well, number one, those people are usually really dynamic. And that's why you're probably doing what you're doing now. They're
Mhm.
really dynamic, they're great leaders. But the thing is that anger happens if they're just stressed, if they've got too much, going on, if they didn't like how the dog ran in and about tripped them, whenever they came in the door, uh, any little thing can trigger that anger. And is that something that was happening with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I look at anger like the secondary emotion, of course, right? You just hit the nail on the head. For example, stress. Let's use a man providing, right? Just trying to make sure he's making ends meet. Maybe he's planning for the future, whatever's going through his mind, and something doesn't happen at work or loses his job or whatever. And so he starts to feel stressed, and then we start to latch on to what we need to protect us. Anger. Why don't you love me and appreciate me, support me, lift me up right now? Why can't you just hold me, cuddle me, let's have sex today? Because otherwise I don't feel good enough because I'm struggling with whatever I'm dealing with. So you use stress, but I'm going to break it down even further and go, I just said it. I don't feel good enough. Something didn't happen. I didn't make enough money. And
Mm.
so all of a sudden now I'm going to latch on to anger because it's a threat-based reaction and it makes me feel more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
I was bad. I was super, super bad at it, but I didn't know any different either. You know, I would challenge anybody who's struggling with anger to think about it just like that. What am I actually feeling? Because anger is not it. Anger is just what you're using as a reaction-based mechanism to cope.
Well, I knew a lady at one point that um she loved her husband and everything was pretty great, but he had just that, he had that anger. And he was a great guy, but he had anger whenever things weren't going right. And my analogy is that they come in and they explode all over, and it's like splattering, what, everywhere. Everybody around them is stinking, they're feeling terrible. And then that person, they feel better now and they walk away. And that happened to her over and over and over. And she happened to be one of those really easygoing people. And so she never said anything. She never fought back. She never said anything. She took it and she took it and she took it. And then one day, she still never said anything. And she started to make plans. She started to get an apartment, figure out what she could, when she would move out. He
Mhm.
knows nothing's going on because she's not going to fight and she's not going to say anything. And that's what she did one day. He walked in and she said, I'm leaving.
That is
And
such a
he was
powerful,
thrown.
yeah, men. So, it's been about 3,200 men in just about 2 years. We're about a week away from 2 years. And it's so common, whether or not you have an anger problem or not, or want to recognize it. The point is we're reacting wrong, incorrectly. We'll call it bad behavior, right? And the rug, this is how we describe it. The rug is pulled out from every one of these men. Now, this could be multimillionaires with wives leaving with a suitcase. They don't care. They just want out, right? This could be what you're describing. This could also be affairs, right?
Mm,
Where is your wife going to go if you're not safe? See, men think if I provide money financially, I'm doing my job. And we're all kind of taught, it's like a normal, but I challenge you to think that's baseline normal. That's you to be a man. If you didn't have a wife, you'd still be providing. So if you're removing safety from your wife, why are you upset if she's going somewhere to emotionally connect somewhere else? That's the safe place. I'm not condoning it. I do not think cheating is acceptable, but you need to understand problem number one. Just like the wife who leaves her spouse with a suitcase and a picture frame and goes, I don't care anymore. I don't need your money. All these things happen daily because it's so much more common than, because I don't know about your listeners, but I know I wasn't running around going, yeah, last night I trashed the house for the 50th time. I called my wife a bitch and I was super mean and abusive and throwing things at her. And oh yeah, the
mm,
police called me, got a restraining order last night. I'm not doing that. Nobody's doing that. You might say I got into a fight with my wife, but you're not getting the help you need or opening yourself up to receive help because it's embarrassing. You're ashamed. Deep
mhm.
down, you're ashamed, right?
Okay, Cass. So I'm going to take this because what I find is often that whenever we, we can have a temper, but either we have witnessed how to handle a temper or how to handle a disagreement, in marriage, or we haven't. And so I'm going to say, how did you grow up? Did you grow up with one parent, two parents, step parents? So I don't really know anything about you on that. So share that with us.
Yeah, so for me, my story was my parents split up when I was very young, and I didn't really know my biological father. Like, by really, I didn't talk to him until I was an adult. Okay. My mom remarried her high school sweetheart, and I only know 17 years of their miserable fighting, daily screaming.
Ooh.
He got a lot of that backlash as well. And also, the I love you 5 times in my entire life that I remember growing up, that included I'm proud of you. Like, for example, one that I remember was graduation, and it wasn't even an I love you. Like, there was just no affection. It was only violence. And by violence, I mean the screaming, we got hit a little, but nothing, I would say, crazy. But I used to think I wasn't abused because of that. You don't realize what emotional toll, abandonment, fear of abandonment, the
Hmm.
insecurity, anxiety that you get from those sorts of things. So yeah, that was my upbringing. Was my dad's a narcissist. I believe it's learned. I don't know if you're born with it or not, but my
Mm.
stepfather is, or adoptive father rather, is a narcissist. My mom's just selfish. I don't think she's a narcissist. I think she's just super selfish. My brother's a narcissist, and I think I picked it up too, you know?
Well, whenever there's a lot of fighting and yelling going around, I don't know about you, but I don't feel very affectionate. And I don't, you don't come up with very many uh things like complimenting your kids or being proactive because everything in your life is being reactive instead.
Yes, one of my most, so I have a lot of content that goes super viral, and one of my most controversial is something along the lines of, you think your wife uses sex as a weapon? You could be hot for each other all day long. You could be flirting, life could be good, great conversation, and then you do something like yell. And that could be at your kids because you had a bad day. That could be the dog knocked over your drink. That could be your
Hmm.
wife said something that you took personally and you yelled, you sneered, you snarled. That's all anger based because you reacted poorly. She's now turned off. And boy, oh boy, I get men that get so upset. And they'll call me names like sissy. And I just laugh. You think it's appropriate to yell at your wife, your dog, your children? You think this is normal behavior? No, it's not good. It's not healthy. Trust me, take it from the guy who yelled every single day, who would tower over his wife for days trying to talk his way or lecture his way into her head, her heart.
Mm.
Doesn't work that way. So yeah, no, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head, and boy, I wish more men would catch on to this. It's a turnoff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that comes down to different personality styles and how we react because like the male that has anger as that top emotion, that's a particular personality style, a particular way that people communicate. And the woman that I was talking about earlier that just decided to leave without saying anything, this is one of those good old people who is takes care of you and never has a complaint, you know and so it's just unexpected. And anger comes not just from men. I mean, women too. And we all have that time we yell at our kids or that we get really irritated with our spouse. And it gets a little stressful, a little more um body language, right?
Can we talk about that for a quick second, please?
Yeah,
Because
please do.
I think this is hilarious. I mean, I believe men should lead, especially if you're a faith. I mean, come on, it's written all over for us, you know? And I just want men who are listening to just really resonate with this real quickly. Just take a moment. I realize your wife probably doesn't handle things well. Let's pretend whether you guys both scream, both shut down, one or the other, who cares? We'll call that a poor reaction. Okay. If you were a man and you believe a man should lead, which pretty much every man will say yes when they're asked. Okay. If your little wife has big emotions and you can't handle it, meaning she's screaming at you and you don't know how to provide structure in the direction for where you're going, i.e., girls just want to have fun. They still
Yes.
sing karaoke today. So if she's off inner feminine and screaming and you can't handle your little wife's big emotions, you're not a leader. Stop acting like you're a victim and you can't handle it. Just say, what can I do? How can I turn this around? And stop saying it's not working. It means you haven't shown up long enough for her to trust you. That's where leadership comes in. You need to be consistent, providing that structure. Make sense?
Yes. And one of the biggest things in that is listening to your spouse. And I know for my husband and I, I'm a talker. And he's actually a talker too, but I'm a bigger talker. And he's such a good listener. So he's a very good listener. And so then as I started to learn more about the communication styles, I realized that how important it is for me to really listen, because when we're talkers, a lot of times we're thinking about the next thing we're going to say and we're not really listening. And so, a good habit is to repeat back maybe what they said, not constantly, because then that gets weird, but but repeat it back to them so they know that you're listening, a little this and that. That even is great with kids, right? So they know
Oh,
you care.
so powerful. And I think you have the normal, like you can write things down, you can repeat back, you can say, do I understand for clarity? But I would challenge you, if you really want to listen, go deeper. I remember when Catherine would say, if you stop yelling, I'll be happy. If you stop yelling, I'll love you. If you stop yelling, I'll want to be intimate again. And so when I stopped yelling through the year of probation, if I screwed up, I'd go to jail. I was on a restraining order and then
Ooh,
probation. And I remember thinking, like, what the heck? Now you're being mean. You're screaming at me. You're throwing things. It wasn't a tremendous length of time in comparison, but it was her reactive side, her turn. And
absolutely.
I remember going, what in the world? Like, I'm doing what you said. I was listening to you. You said, don't yell. And I would challenge anybody who's trying to become a better listener. It's more about understanding than listening. The immediate cushion of safety for Catherine was don't yell. That's not the safety she needed for the structure for the future, where she felt safe and peaceful, where she could trust that I wasn't going to yell ever again. You do that by things we talked about earlier, structure. But you can't figure that out if you're not starting with the basics, listening, and then learning to empathize. For some of us, I had to learn what
Hmm.
empathy was, compassion, what does it feel like? And then from there, true understanding. Now we can talk about getting through hard conversations, not communication, conversations, you know?
And asking questions. That's another one. And so you ask questions, that shows that you're listening. Although my husband doesn't always like questions.
I find I find that the more comfortable you are together, the less you need to think about things like this. When I teach response versus reaction, men think, "Oh my gosh, this is the rest of my life." No, when you're a partnership, you're going to find your groove. Maybe you do talk more than your husband. That's okay. And when you're there for him and you're asking questions, you figure out your balance, right? But in the beginning, if you haven't been partners for a while, you need to establish some foundation again, right?
Right. And sometimes when I would be asking questions, he would think it was an interrogation.
I think that's just we take it so personal. So if you think about men being simple, right? Like intimacy is the easiest example, so I always like to use it. She doesn't want to have sex with you, and you feel rejected inside, you feel isolated, you feel lonely. And rather than trying to listen and understand what's going on, and then you're having too many talks, why don't you want me, this and that, you're taking everything personal, right?
Absolutely.
And
Mhm.
so the moment you're taking it personal, you're not understanding your partner anymore. And so you're not going to get anywhere,
I
right?
was about to say from the woman's side, it's not personal.
It's not. There's
It's
so many
not
different
personal.
so many different things. And I think that if men and women could learn, it's not personal. It's about why did you do this in the first place? It's partnership. I get so fed up with all these programs out there that are like, become the best version of yourself. Yes, that's important. Don't get me wrong. But the best version of you when you got into this marriage was a partnership as well. You both had strengths. You lifted each other's weaknesses. While you're so focused on yourself, taking things personal, pardon me, but throwing yourself a pity party or victimizing yourself, you're not ever thinking about your partner. That's why you defend yourself and you're not protecting your wife. How can that make any sense?
We know, Cass, I keep thinking about that 7 times that y'all separated. I'm thinking about the thing you said a minute ago about a restraining order. There are people that maybe don't even have half all that, right? They don't have half all that. And sometimes it's just simply rubbing each other wrong to where they don't like each other anymore. But I want you to tell us what happened during all those separations and that order that changed you? What changed? Did your wife keep looking for help? Did you start looking for help? What what began the change?
There's actually multiple steps in there. So like in the first couple of years, it was really bad, and then it had the restraining order, and so court mandated anger management. I'd
Mm,
already done about 12 years of therapy at that time. It's two of those years with Catherine or my own, and then there was still two more years following. We'd hired a life coach, but it was all sort of forced. Catherine didn't believe, and this wouldn't mean that this would I think would be anybody going through something, right? They don't, your partner doesn't believe the changes because they know what they know who they've seen, right? So it was forced by court. So Catherine didn't believe me. And then we got to a point where I was really proud of my best version. I would still get upset and there were still issues. I would still slip. Insecurity was massive for me. Fear of losing her, fear of, well,
mm,
sex was a big issue. So, is there somebody else? All kinds of fear-based, threat-based reactions would still come out. But I thought things were great. This is when men think the rug's getting pulled out. And this is when one day I hit on Catherine and she just said, listen, I'm not interested. Like she just flat out rejected me. And I was like, I want to use this thing. And she was so gentle and sweet when I think back now. She just sat me down. She said, listen, honey, I'm not attracted. I'm not in love, and I'm settling. I'm here only to honor my commitment and my oath
ooh.
to God. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I lost my poop for 3 days. Like I screamed, you wasted my time. You've done victimizing myself because I'd done quote unquote all this work, right? And then I clicked and I realized, why do I keep asking her? Why? Like that's like saying it takes two. No, I'm asking my mommy, saying it takes you to tell me what to do to show up and be somebody that I should be proud of, that somebody that she wants to follow. And that's when I really got to work. That's when I started beating up books. That's when I started thinking about I used to own a gym and I would train women all day long in a group setting, 8 hours a day. And so I started to think about things that these women would say. I wish my husband wouldn't come home from work. I wish that my husband would do X. And I started to think about these books that I was reading. And then at some point, started getting into coaches and mentors. And at some point, Catherine still wasn't quite there. And I had to look at her and say, listen, like now I knew I was a 10 and I'm looking down at like a 6. You're not so special anymore. You're coasting still, is what I felt like.
Actually, your
And
roles kind of traded on you.
that's right. And I felt very not unattracted. I saw so much love and reason why I wanted to move forward. But I was at a point, no contempt, going, this isn't going to work for me. And that's major kicker right there. For anybody who's thinking about leaving, thinking they do so much, thinking they're trying so much. It's if you can talk to your partner with zero contempt, going, this just isn't going to work for me. If the old guy ruined it, well, I can accept that. But I'm not the old guy. So you can stay married to him, but I'm going to divorce you both, you know? And no contempt. She literally got to work. She got her first $13,000 course. She started to get more education. She got her PhD. Like
She
and we just,
started growing.
she started growing. Yeah. And now, that's the number one thing Catherine will tell anybody, what would have made things different? What would have made, she goes, accept your partner's changes, accept them, love them through it. It's not easy. You don't know what you don't know. We didn't even know what narcissism was back then, you know? So
Mhm.
you don't know what you don't know. Love your partner through it and grow. And at some point, that's when you get to look at your partner and go, this isn't going to work for me. And that happens in our programs. We don't love that. We want to keep marriages together. It's where our mission is, or disrupting divorce, but it's a reality, right? You've got to both want to go.
I love that. Okay, so I'm looking at the pictures because I could see you, and so some people will see this on YouTube. But how old are your kids?
My twin girls are just about 5. In March, they'll be 5. And I have a little
Oh,
boy, Catherine, that is also, he's just going to turn 3 a month later. And then I have another son somewhere else. It's one of the reasons why I understand you don't tear a family apart. You don't see your child. It's, you know,
okay, Cass. So I'm going to ask you, how old is your other child, your oldest?
just turned 12.
Just turned 12. So it's like um your children are not having to go through all of that because you guys got it together before you had kids. But
Well, yes and no, yes and no. So that right around that time where I said to Catherine, let's grow, So she was still staying together maybe for the kids. And that's when we really got our poop together because that's when she really jumped in. Right. And so that's one of the things that a lot of women that we've learned really resonate with. They'll stay together for the kids. It's not exactly what you
Mhm.
think. Could be that they're afraid of your husband raising the children. There's different kinds of motives that are really scary for women. And so you're not going to get somewhere if your partner is feeling this way. So yeah, we really figured it out during COVID, broke after losing a 7-figure gym, couldn't go on dates, you're in quarantine, stuck together. And this is when we did the most growth and when we really, really crushed it. Yeah.
So you guys got stuck together during COVID. And really, you just kind of gotten, this has been a journey. And I like to say a lot of times that people have this vision of marriage and family and what they want it to be like. And they have the big wedding with all the flowers and the dresses and the reception. And then they get married and they've arrived. And marriage is a journey of personal growth and learning about each other and doing new things and learning new things that are like, I've been married a long time. So I've been through the just married stage. I've been through the children stage. I've been through the kids flying the coop, kids coming back in the coop. I've had, I've just been through all different things. And then your kids are gone and you got a while before that happens, but then your kids are gone. Now you got to get to know each other again if you've been so involved that you haven't taken time for each other. And so it's so important. I have a thing that I do with churches, and it's called date night.
Mhm.
And it's just the beginnings of starting to make people aware of how we perceive things differently and the importance of paying attention, to one another, because people just take each other for granted. And life is busy, right?
Oh yeah, I can't stress this enough. Like when you're thinking back to when our children haven't seen us fight. Okay, I want everybody to think about this. Life gets in the way no matter what. You
Hmm.
are not special. We all have jobs, or you're a stay-at-home parent, whatever you chose. They're still your job. Okay. You still have choices there. Then we have a spouse, we have children, right? And hopefully you're running God, you, marriage, kids, and then whatever that is, and everything that's below that is whatever you do, right? I don't speak to my family, for example. You might. Okay. Expectations are going to be thrown at you. First thing you need to realize is you're not special. We all have poop going on in our life. You need to prioritize in order what matters because when the kids move out, if you have to get to know your partner again, it could be game over. It really could be. And long before that, why do you think people are getting divorced all the time? They don't know how to deal with these expectations. We started this with stress from work earlier, right?
Hmm.
You're not going to avoid it. You're not. You think it wasn't stressful to lose a 7-figure gym, our house, our vehicles, get evicted from a home, starting our life over? Give me a break. You don't have a babysitter because you don't speak to your family. Find a way. Like all of these things are possible. Like you just said it perfectly. This date night. We came up with well, I came up with 7 types of dates that you can do. None of them require money or you can involve money. We did that. Why? Because it was COVID and I wanted to connect with my wife and turn my marriage around, right? This is all choice. It's all choice. And if you don't know how, go learn. Everything's free on YouTube nowadays, man. Go learn. Start
There,
there. Like
there is. Okay, so Cass, share with us how people can find you, and I don't know if you have something for them today as a gift, or tell them how to find you and what you have for them.
absolutely. Anywhere you search, just search Moral Marriage. And that's our website, moralmarriage.com. I have a wicked free training on automatic turnoffs. I think every man needs to go through this, realizing and I mean conversations all the way to sex. I don't mean just turnoffs from sex, but you can't have sex if you're not talking, you know. So I train on that. I train on why this is happening to you. This will cover not what happened in your childhood, but what you're going through right now. And that could more likely is your childhood. And then from there, I show a fight with Catherine and I. She had a secret recording back in 2016. Look out. It's not our worst behavior. It's not certainly police night, but you can go to moralmarriage.com, go through that stuff. You're probably going to have your eyes open or our podcast. We share our story and we give our lessons along the way. So
Awesome. And for my listeners, I have a free 40-minute session, which is fresh insights. And that's whenever you're having a lot of trouble and you need to talk to somebody, just to kind of get that out and see if I can help you in that. And you'll find that in the show notes. So Cass, thank you for being with me today. We just met today. His agent contacted me. And so we just met. A lot of times I've been talking to people, that I've met and been working with the last 3 or 4 years. And I do have to say, I did notice in your notes where it said, from atheism, to belief. And I think a lot of times that makes a big difference. Can I ask when you found faith?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started to go to church to support Catherine. She was raised Pentecostal. Her dad was a pastor. And I just thought, well, I'll go if you give me everything I need. And I, along the way, wanted to believe so bad. And I can't even tell you how many times I should have called out from the crowd. I'll never forget the very first time. It was very charismatic. It's something I'd never experienced. It kind of scary, to be perfectly honest. And called out from the crowd, and it doesn't matter what your earthly father has done to you, doesn't matter how he treats you, your heavenly father loves you. And I'm like bawling, man. Like I should have. How do you even know that? You know what I mean? And you'll be laying hands on couples. You and your wife will be. Is that you and your wife? Okay, your wife stand up, and you guys will be healing couples. There's fire around. We saw this over and over, and I still struggle to believe. I don't know if it's the deep ingrained atheism or just a lot of questions. I don't know, but it took me quite a while. And then during COVID, I just surrendered. Matthew 25:26 and 25:36, where Jesus says, I'll go, but I don't want to. I'll do your will, but I don't want to. And Catherine went to the bathroom. We were reading the Bible. Catherine went to the bathroom, and I just hit the floor. She came out and she started swearing at God. He's surrendering. Give it to. And she started praying and going nuts and anointing the house. And next thing I know, I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and the rest is history. So
That's awesome. I'm so glad I asked that. So you guys are Pentecostal. I'm Baptist, so we're a lot calmer than that. But you know what? We need to be in between. We need to be in between.
I think
So,
I have no judgment anyway. I'll tell you why I like it. I think it counteracts the atheism. It's like it's in your face. you know Things like prophecy. And when I say I should have believed, like I don't know if any of your listeners have experienced it, but if you have thousands of people in a room and all night long they're looking for someone, and then they pick you out and know things they couldn't possibly know because you've never met anybody in that room, and there's stuff, because otherwise you think it's staged, right? If you're an atheist, you think it's
mm,
fake. They planted that person, but they pull you out of the crowd. And so for me, I think that's what it is. It's a little bit more over the top for a lot of people, but for me, it's like it almost shakes me where I have to believe, if that makes sense. Reminds me that I'm supposed to. Do you know what I mean?
plus, when a guy like you is touched to the place of tears, then something supernatural is going on.
Yeah, that's true. Although,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, because whenever our hearts touched, it's like, we may have been just having terrible thoughts or terrible words before that. And then when our hearts touched, it's like everything changes. And that's what I've seen, is that everything changes. So thank you, Cass, for being with me today. And you guys look him up, Cass Morrow. You can find him on Instagram. You guys are several places. What's your website?
Morrowmarriage.com, but really moral marriage on any platform. We're big on Facebook. We're growing everywhere else, but yeah, anywhere. Just search moral marriage. You'll find us.
And I'll have that in the podcast notes. I am at theextraordinarymarriage.com/podcast. You can find his podcast. So thank you so much for speaking with me today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a blast.